Andrew here, and let's talk about a throwaway line. A throwaway line, Andrew? Yes, a throwaway line. Often, as a content creator, you're typing something up or you're making a video and you throw a one-off line somewhere in the middle. And that one-off line is used to elucidate another point when you realize that it is a whole piece of content in and of itself. In a previous video, I mentioned I have been talking about the crisis that we're now fully into. There's the economic crisis because we're in recession, we're going into a depression, and it's going to rival the Great Depression, I suspect, simply because that's what happens. They called it the Long Depression before the American Civil War. They called it the Great Depression before World War II. I don't know what they're going to call this one. But we've been in a slow-moving economic crisis since the 2001 banking collapse, mortgage crisis. And 15 years is a long friggin' time, but we're in it. Now, the COVIDiocy has put us into a full-on economic crisis. We've got the neocon dipshits in charge of our foreign policies slavering to get into a war with Russia. We're trying to get into war. Why? It's a mystery to me. I really don't want to be doing that, but I'm not 18 years old anymore, and I'm not expecting to die as the Russians pour through Fulda Gap. But that right there is a throwaway line. And I could give you an entire piece of content based on my one-off line that in 1988, I fully expected to die in the Fulda Gap as the Russians poured through in their effort to conquer Europe. There's a whole topic right there if I decide to explore it. But in the previous video, what I did was I threw away a line about we are in an economic crisis, we're coming into potentially a war, and we're in the midst of a societal upheaval. And that societal upheaval line is actually a full piece of content. It's a full video unto itself. I read a book about 5 years ago, around the same time that I read Generations, or The Fourth Turning, pardon me. And it was called The Great Reset by a fellow named Richard Florida. And he was talking about the same thing. About every 90 years, we have a massive reordering of society and the way that we live and work and so on. And before the Long Depression that led to the American Civil War, we were an agrarian nation with the vast majority of people living on farms. After that, the Industrial Revolution hit full bore, and we moved into densely packed cities, and we lived within a walk or a bus ride of a factory. And we had our job while working on the factory line or in the office or the whatever, but we were in high density. And we did that for 4 generations. But then we had the Great Depression, and then and World War II. And that led to the suburban explosion, the suburban revolution. And we got cars and we were driving. So you think about that. We went from agrarian to tight, densely packed cities to suburbs. 3 completely different ways of ordering our lives, a societal revolution. Well, we're in one now. And obviously, I can't speak for the last one or the one before. I'm not that old. But the way that we that we interacted with one another changed in those periods of time. And we are now in something similar. We're seeing an urban-suburban or urban-rural divide. If you look at the American electoral map, and what you do is you color the counties that voted for Biden one color and the counties that voted for Trump a different color, and you see that 90% of the land mass of the United States voted Trump. which is another way of saying that 50% of the country is living in less than 10% of the landmass, those tightly packed, densely packed cities and suburbs. That's where the Democrat vote is, where the Republican vote is out countryside. You can see the same thing in Canada. If you want to have some fun, look up a map that shows the population density. 50% of the Canadian populace lives between Windsor and Quebec City within, I think, 100 miles of the American border, if you go north to south. Just that tiny thin strip along the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence Seaway. And that tiny thin strip of 50% of the Canadian population determines our governments and votes a particular way. But would you tell me, what does a laptop clash douchebag like myself living in a city know about the way a farmer, a trapper, a hunter living in rural Alberta, rural Saskatchewan, rural Manitoba, whatever, rural Ontario? What do I know about how they should order their lives? I had a classmate who had coined a great expression: the absolute square root of sweet fuck all. I know nothing about their lives. But our votes in these highly densely populated places determine the government that makes regulations for them. This divide is getting worse. I think it's as deep and as wide in Canada as it is in the United States, but it is more stark in the United States. And this societal crisis can be seen in, I really got to post that video on Roe v. Wade and the striking down of Roe v. Wade about the insanity. People in California attacking the police because people in a state 1,000 miles away might put a restriction on abortion that they in Los Angeles don't like. How does this affect your life? People in Canada losing their fucking minds because Alabama is going to write an abortion law they don't like. How does this affect your life? Do you know what level of government is the most important for your day-to-day quality of life? Your municipal government. We have a municipal election coming up in about 4 weeks or 3.5 weeks. Go and fucking vote. Learn the candidates, learn the issues, and vote. Your ward councillor, your regional councillor, your mayor, in my area, your regional chairman. These are the guys who are going to have the most profound effect on your day-to-day quality of life. Sure, it's fun to mock Dumb and Dumber blackface Hitler. Sure, it's fun to mock the fat fascist fuck of Queen's Park. But on a day-to-day basis, the farther away they are from you, the less effect they have. And yet, the voter turnout is greatest at the federal level, next at the provincial level, and next at the municipal level. And it's the same in the U.S. Greatest at the federal level, next at the state level, least at the municipal level. Is that a symptom of this divide? I don't know. But I do know that somebody who, like me, works on a laptop and telecommutes most of the time, living in a city, really shouldn't be telling somebody who has to drive 50 miles to shop for groceries how he should order his life. And let's be fair, he should not be doing the same for me. And this crisis, this break, this societal divide is getting worse. How it's going to resolve? Well, the next 5 to 10 years will show us. I make zero predictions on that. All I know is it's going to be very, very different. But it is the third component, or it is a component. And isn't it funny? Here I am almost 10 minutes in, and I started by saying a simple throwaway line can create an entire piece of content. And I took that simple throwaway piece of line, expanded upon it, and now have made what might be the longest piece of content that I've created for you. Well, I didn't create it for you, I created it for me. You can watch it, that's cool, but I make these for me. Anyway, if you're a content creator, understand we live in a time, you do not need to cultivate a scarcity mindset. If you are a content creator, have an abundance mindset, because somewhere in that piece of content you just published, there's a single simple throwaway line that turns into a whole nother piece. Food for thought. Thanks for watching. That was my time. Now it's your time. And in the meantime, take care, and you'll see me soon.